Hello all. It's good to get all our participants back after almost a month. So, a very good evening to all of you, and a very good morning to our trainers, Dr. Brooke and Mr. Steve. So, we have both our trainers from SeeBoundless today. And today happens to be the last webinar in our webinar series of webinar that we had planned. So, today is being the fourth one. And today's one will be on innovative storytelling using augmented reality and virtual reality. And I'm very sure with the tools and techniques and hands-on knowledge on these things, that today's session is going to be very interesting. And I'm very sure that our participants are also eagerly waiting for that. So without any further ado, so I will just formally introduce our trainers and then I will give the stage to them. So first of all, we have with us Dr. Van Dam Brooke, who currently works as a director at SeeBoundless to foster partnerships with news organizations, nonprofits and universities and social good-driven companies. Prior to her current post, she was the faculty director and an associate professor of the practice at the Georgetown University. Her research interests have always been in the study of journalists and journalism and the professional as well as ethical changes brought to them with the onset of new forms of technology. She received her PhD in sociology from City University, London. Her master's was in international journalism from the University of Westminster, London. And we also have Steve Johnson, who's basically the founder of SeeBoundless. He is also a photojournalist, a technologist, professor, and entrepreneur, leading the charge in immersive storytelling across news organizations, nonprofits, and universities. So his work back in 2018 with augmented reality news took the audiences across the globe by putting entire buildings and city blocks right in front of them using Apple's ARKit technology. The first AR-driven journalism series ever. Working with fellow journalists to write the manual on immersive storytelling, he has developed standards and practices, ethics guidelines, and tools that are used among news organizations and universities nationwide. His stories can be found in the pages and websites of the Washington Post, Reuters, European Press Photo Agency, and the New York Times. He is an alumnus of University of Florida, Warrington College of Business. So with this formal introduction of both our trainers, I will hand over the session to both Dr. Brooke and Mr. Steve. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sucharita. That was lovely. I sound very important at 6 a.m.
You are not audible.
Anytime I'm having
audible.
Hold on one second. Can you hear us now?
Perfectly audible.
Okay. All right, everyone can hear us? Thumbs up, great. Throw anything in the chat, that'd be great, wonderful.
Yeah, so thank you all for coming. I know sometimes the last series in a session, you're maybe ready to wrap it up. So hopefully this is really interesting for all of you. I know it's a tricky topic because it's really technical, but we want to try and kind of demystify augmented reality, virtual reality. Obviously, there are some barriers to entry here. So we're sort of addressing that through this, what you would need to do it, how you can make it a little bit easier. And then also talking about use cases. So we're really excited to bring this to you. And we assume you're going to have loads of questions at the end. So please feel free to put them in the chat as you go, or if there's something really compelling as we're going, please feel free to stop us, because in some cases, especially when we're talking about more technical stuff, it might be easier to explain it as we go versus waiting until the end. So we are happy to be interrupted at any point throughout this presentation.
Yep. And some of the examples that we're going to pull up as well, a lot of them are YouTube links and website pages. I'm going to throw those in the chat window as we talk about that as well. That way you have that to reference. Sometimes over video, showing video over a Zoom, it tends to be a little bit choppy. So that way you can see that as well. The format of how we're going to go over this is I'm actually just going to share our whole computer screen, because we're going to be jumping back and forth from an Apple Keynote presentation to actually opening up a video editor to kind of show you a little bit behind the scenes of how we would edit and build a VR experience, and obviously jumping to some of those examples as well. So I'm going to do a share screen. Sujit, if you could do enable screen
I
sharing.
will just make you the co-host. Just a second.
Perfect.
Yes, done.
Great. And actually, just if everyone wouldn't mind, just as an initial, just kind of gauging of interest, I know we have the little reactions tab on the bottom here with kind of a claps or a thumbs up. Would everyone want to do one of those if you have experienced a VR project, whether that's watching on YouTube or in a headset, or experienced an augmented reality project where that's opening up a camera app on your phone and seeing that? If everyone wants to do a thumbs up or great. Great. And I'll open up our Keynote. Okay, we have our Keynote. Now we look blue because of, anyway. This is actually a really fun opening image. This is actually us when we were inside of a glacier in Iceland doing the first ever climate change 360-degree video. Actually, I've got that camera rig right behind me. On the shelf, it was 6 GoPros, all kind of 3D printed together. And this is actually the stitching software back then. The cameras didn't create a spherical video. Now it's much, much easier to do. But we didn't know if it would work. So we had to test it at the time we were filming, which meant praying that our MacBook Pro battery and GoPro batteries wouldn't freeze inside of a glacier, trying to get this to work, where we had a climate scientist kind of guiding us through this experience. Sutrita did a wonderful introduction.
I know, I feel like she really sold us. So I'm not going to spend too much time going on and on about our background. So I have been a university professor for 12 years, teaching journalism. My background is television journalism. So as with most of you, I'm imagining AR and VR is a newer technology. So whereas for Steve, it's a little more intuitive and he's worked with it a bit longer. I've been working really hard to, simplify and make this easy. I work with all of our education partners. We do trainings for different people. We also create curriculum, university curriculum in virtual reality now. So that's something that we're trying to not only do at the news, but also in the university setting. And then I also work as a field writer. I think we mentioned this in the introductory, but we are a married team that runs the company, hence us being together in a similar room, which I know is probably not something that everybody experiences all the time.
Yeah, during the pandemic, seeing 2 people in one Zoom window was quite jarring. So Trina, I want to make sure you can still admit people in. I don't want to leave anybody in the waiting room. That's correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
everybody
great.
has joined. Yeah.
Perfect. I just want to double check. Wonderful, wonderful. All right, I am going to click over to me. Hi, everyone. I'm Steve. So yes, I started as a photojournalist working with news organizations. I also taught at the University of Florida in their College of Journalism and Communications in immersive storytelling and emerging technologies, specifically for news organizations and journalists as we were training our journalists. So this, of course, is back in 2012, 2013, 2014, before I founded SeeBoundless, and we were really working on how do users interact with iPads and magazines and not treat the iPad as just a digital piece of paper, which I know sounds archaic now because smartphone screens are pretty universal when it comes to news organizations. And really what SeeBoundless does is we work with news organizations, we work with nonprofits, we work with foundations to help bring technology and storytelling into their journalism. That might be something as simple as mailing GoPros to people to be able to do Zoom interviews over the pandemic. So it wouldn't just be recorded on Zoom, they could record it on their smartphone or GoPro locally. Or that might be the Weather Channel here sending me into a glacier, trying to figure out how we can better, engage our audiences to learn that actually glaciers melt from the bottom up, believe it or not, in terms of how water comes down the crevasses and helps them slide down, where you see those dramatic images of glaciers breaking up. And so this has really been a wonderful past, oh my gosh, almost 8 years now, working with organizations to do trainings just like this, to help folks realize that technology and storytelling, whether that's building an iPad app or building a virtual environment, is actually very simple. The cameras that we're going to talk about today, some of them are completely free and apps on your smartphone, and some of them are a couple $100 US, and we did do the currency conversion as well on our slides, that you can actually start producing these VR environments and using these tools to do things like live streaming directly in virtual reality or building these films and examples. I want to start off and clarify a couple of things, and I usually do this at the beginning of all of our trainings because we read a lot about what is virtual reality, what is mixed reality, what is all of this technology. So first off, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. This is not virtual reality, and there is no metaverse. I want to start off with that because we hear a lot of noise, specifically from a company formerly known as Facebook, now known as Meta, that is really trying to say we are the metaverse. All right, they changed their name for that reason, and that would essentially be like somebody changing their company's name to Water and saying all water is us. So this is a lot of computer generated renders, a lot of what a company hopes the future will look like. But this is also not augmented reality. It's a computer generated advertisement for what could be augmented reality in the future. I want to say those things up front because a lot of our editors, a lot of our newspaper owners, a lot of our heads of foundations, a lot of our fundraisers on the foundation side, and funders see these images on local news reports or read them in the paper or advertisements and go, oh, so are we going to be able to have a roundtable VR discussion with world leaders all at the same time for the New York Times? No, that we're still going to do it over Zoom. If you wanted to go by the true definition of the metaverse, all of us currently right now are in a metaverse talking over Zoom. We are in different locations using technology to facilitate communication. So I always want to go through some of these first just because there is a lot of noise in this space and we really want to simplify the technology and really focus on why should you use the technology and how can it help our readers understand stories better. If you stick to those two, really one simple thing, how our readers can understand something better, you're going to do an amazing job using this technology and building it in to your workflow and your newsrooms.
Yeah, so we kind of created a glossary, and we are going to make sure that you all have access to this presentation too after we've put it in a PDF so that you can reference this going forward. So we've created sort of just basic definitions here. AR, not to be confused with AI. Sometimes people use augmented reality, and what they're really talking about is artificial intelligence, but they're very different things. So augmented reality is an enhanced version of the real physical world that is achieved through the use of digital visual elements, sound, or other sensory stimuli delivered by technology. So basically, augmented reality is when you use a camera phone, or they've been trying to sell us for years on glasses that absolutely no one can afford.
Yeah. Right now, the closest in terms of glasses is Microsoft HoloLens. And it's $2,000 to $3,000 US, and it's used in very specific use cases.
So it's the idea that you look through a screen, and through that screen, you can project images. So you use computer coding to sort of amplify an image that you can only see if you look through a screen. So that's what AR is. VR, virtual reality, is an artificial environment which is experienced through sensory stimuli provided by a computer, and in which one's actions partially determine what happens in the environment. So traditionally, we sort of see that in the ability to look around a space. Most people have experienced virtual reality in video games, where you can move around, look around, but you can do the same thing in real environments, which is what we're going to talk about today. We actually don't work in animation at all. So we only work with photo and video virtual reality,
yep.
Which is different than obviously animated.
Yep. And extended reality is essentially kind of the blanket term for both. It's the idea that you're using content, you're using technology to enhance or combine environments. So that would be something very simple, as if I am going shopping at a store and there's a QR code next to a pair of shoes that I would like to buy. If I scan that pair of, that QR code, now my phone is bringing up a video of Usain Bolt running the 100-meter dash with those shoes. It's the idea of, can we take a physical space and blend it with this content that we're creating? And that's things like 360-degree video and VR video, which is a lot of the examples we're going to go over today, is how we can produce 360 and VR video. Photogrammetry is actually what we use to create an augmented reality object. I do want to ask, if anybody has any questions, feel free to chime in, because our chat window doesn't pop up while we have this up full screen. So if you just want to just chime in, feel free to ask a question.
You can pull it up on the top though.
Oh yeah, let me get my mouse because I've got to clear out here. Hold on. Great. All right, now I think my chat window should pop up as we go through here. We're balancing like 6 panels of screens, so we apologize. Photogrammetry is actually what we use to create an AR object. So a good example of an augmented reality object would actually be that example I just gave about buying a shoe, right? We can now use our smartphone essentially to take pictures of a shoe from all these different directions, and through a free app, create a 3D version of that shoe, where you can spin it, turn it, on your phone screen, you can move it around, but also you can open up your camera app and place that object on a surface, which any smartphone now can do. Photogrammetry is the process that we use to basically create that 3D object. And I will show you how to do this. More importantly, how to do this for free, and how to share this content for free using a YouTube-like embedding, just like you'd embed a video on YouTube. And Brooke, do you want to take it away with our last glossary of our favorite term?
Leave metaverse to me. I think you already defined it well. We are in a metaverse, right? It's a virtual space in which people can interact with each other. It's sort of right now exists in a hopeful space. A lot of companies are investing in this idea that at some point we're all going to put on headsets and live in virtual, almost animated spaces. We can have a debate later on whether that will actually become reality or not. But right now it really doesn't exist, except for really in computer video games. If those of you who play video games, you know that you can chat and interact while you're in a virtual space. So a video game would actually be a metaverse.
Because you can communicate. If your editors or newspaper owners or business partners ever ask, what is the metaverse? What is Web 3.0? We need to get on the blockchain. A good way that I like to describe this is for those of you that are a little bit older like us, that experienced the internet in the early 90s, or at least read about it or saw there was like Netscape Navigator, Internet Explorer, AOL, what was the other one? Netscape was one of the big ones that had but anyway, all of these different internets, all within what we would consider a connected internet, right? Your website had to be coded just to work on AOL or just on Netscape. And eventually HTTP, HTML, JavaScript, all of these different computer languages all started to work interchangeably with each other. Very similar to how applications now work on Mac and PC, but they're all computer programs. So right now the metaverse is a video game over here, a Facebook over there, a Zoom over there. And the theory is people want to try to connect those all together. we'll see how that shakes out, because it would require a lot of cooperation between a lot of companies that are competing for trillions of dollars. So we'll see how that shakes out. But we always want to go through some of these glossaries at first, just to get everybody up to speed. We've got the chat window open as well. So if anybody has a specific question about any of these, please feel free to interrupt us, and we'd be happy to do that.
So we're going to show you, we're going to start with virtual reality and then move to augmented reality. So our first example, which I thought was a really good one, because it's, we just put it in the chat window too, so everyone can see it, or link to it, is a live shot that the BBC did from Jerusalem's Holy Fire ceremony. And why I think this is interesting, particularly from a news perspective, is it can help you show scope of a story, especially when we talk about events. I know the overarching theme of this series is really trying to get to misinformation and disinformation. And one of the biggest ways that spread is sort of redefining what happened in a space, right? So, you know, a group of people can be somewhere and then a politician gets up and said, oh no, that's not what happened. Or we here in the United States had a previous president who liked to claim such and such amount of people were at an event. Well, when you have 360, you can look in all directions, not just forward where with a flat photo, you know, you can only see in that frame, you can see all around it. So you can get a better sense of what actually went on. So we'll watch a short bit of this clip.
Waiting for a miracle. Some people believe in it, other people are a little bit more skeptical. This is the Holy Sepulchre Church in Jerusalem. Christians believe it's built over the spot where Jesus was crucified.
So this is our presenter.
Large building with candles in front of it is the tomb of Jesus, and what's going to happen is that
and Steve is just moving his mouse around, and YouTube allows you to do this, as does Facebook. And it's a really easy to when you upload. So there's no kind of barrier to entry of, oh no, now I need and we'll talk about this in a bit, but how do I distribute this? It's available.
And so if you were to watch this on your smartphone, on the YouTube app for iOS or Android, or even on your browser, you actually wouldn't need to click and drag like we just did on desktop. You'd be able to hold your phone up and move it just around. It's similar to the about $3 to $4 US, the Google Cardboard headsets that you could actually slot your phone into a headset and move around with your head as well. What we have found is about 98% of our audiences are viewing our virtual reality videos with their smartphone and holding it and looking around to kind of discover it themselves. What is nice about this technology is it plays very nicely across a lot of platforms. The same 360 video file will work on YouTube. It will work on Vimeo's player. It will work on Facebook's video player. It will work across a lot of platforms on mobile and on desktop and on tablet, which is kind of that hybrid.
Also, depending on what newsrooms you're in, if you're a freelancer, what platforms you use, we'd be happy to look into that too for you if you wanted to find out if that technology is available there. So just like shoot us a note about that in the chat.
We go over today.
We sort of already did this, but why you should, I guess we talked about why you should use AR and VR. I think what it does is it sort of, especially with VR, it really brings people into a space in a way that they couldn't otherwise, especially the ability to kind of see all around you is really important when we're talking about misinformation and disinformation, because now you're not framing a photo, you're kind of giving people the ability to look all around and then they can frame that photo. That's a huge critique of journalists, right? And again, this idea of misinformation and disinformation and attacking journalists can be, well, you're just looking at it from their perspective. You're just looking at it from the way they frame it. Well, now you're not doing that. You're saying to the viewer, hey, look all around. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing, and this is what I'm seeing. So you're actually doing what I would argue is a sort of easier, more transparent form of truth telling. And then AR, I think, is an important tool to really show people what a thing looks like, especially historical artifacts. And we'll kind of talk about this as when we get to the AR section.
Yeah, it's a great explainer. We like to say that you use virtual reality to bring people to places. and we use augmented reality to bring places to people. So if you want to transport someone, to a glacier in Iceland, or to Israel for this ceremony, VR, Sutriti can admit them. VR will bring your audience there. If you are trying to show what a specific object or thing looks like, that could be an artifact that was discovered at let's say they're trying to build a new skyscraper downtown and the whole project got halted because there were artifacts discovered underneath. You could very easily with a smartphone scan that, bring that into your story, and now your readers could take that artifact and see it in their own dining table or living room and see what you're talking about with notes and annotations, and they could experience that story as well.
Yeah. So I think we already did this, how to create it, use cases, and then at the end we'll sort of wrap up talking about how this can help with mis and disinformation.
Perfect. Get my mouse back. So there's a couple of different stories that on the immersive side that I'll also put in our chat window as well. And you'll see one is from Euronews, where it's actually embedded directly on a page. The next two are YouTube links that actually go basically the first ever war zone in 360. And then we actually chose one from 2017 from the New York Times that actually goes through how basically citizens in Ukraine were learning how to fight. And this is actually now very timely, but this video was back from 2017. So I want to actually start with our Euronews one, mostly because we know that this will play in browser and on a page, which is really nice. And so this is a 2-minute long kind of narrated piece. Again, you can click and move around.
A time bomb is ticking beneath the surface of many European seas. Countless pieces of rusting munitions have been lost or intentionally dumped on the seafloor during the course of the 20th century. The location of these deadly dumping grounds is often poorly documented. It's estimated that German parts of the North Sea and the Baltic Sea alone contain some 1.6 million metric tons of relic munitions.
So what they're doing is using very basic graphics to help guide you through that as well. Essentially just text boxes that are helping with the voiceover as well in this piece.
Chemical weapons threaten human life and the marine environment, endangering fishing and navigation, impeding development of offshore energy, agriculture, shipping, tourism, and other sectors of the blue economy. The European Union is supporting research projects that aim to find and clear undersea munitions. This underwater drone is used to study the Kolberger Haid marine dump site in the Baltic Sea near the city of Kiel. In this area alone, we can see some 30,000 tons of rusting sea mines, aerial bombs, torpedo heads, and other munitions dumped in large piles or scattered on the seafloor. These crumbling chunks are exposed pieces of TNT and other explosives. They slowly decay, releasing harmful substances into the seawater, including cytotoxic, genotoxic, and carcinogenic chemicals. Various countries routinely dumped obsolete.
So one of the reasons I thought that this example was also very useful beyond, obviously it's super interesting, and a 360 camera underwater is fantastic technology, is one of the areas I think that this is most useful for when we talk about misinformation and disinformation, and that is climate change, right? So, oh, it's not happening, oh, it's not that bad, oh, I think that with virtual reality, you're really able to show people the scope of issues that are going around, right? Like, so you're on the sea floor here, and I can go all around, and all around me is sea junk, essentially, that is changing the ecosystem in our waters. So it's a great use case. I remember in the intro session, some of you had said you were environmental reporters or interested in this. So taking people to different climates and showing them what it's actually like can be very impactful, and also over time. So if you start recording stuff in 360 now, going back to that same space 2 or 3 years from now, it's going to look different. And so you're also able to sort of capture spaces over time. Yeah,
especially, things that are a huge issue across the world, but specifically maybe especially in some of the markets that you cover, is where people put trash, and to show just how large or scale, or how much of a scale. So if you're reporting on, a local municipality's trash removal process, which of course, that sentence might sound very boring to an average reader, a local municipality's trash removal process, right? But if you can say, hey, this is being really mismanaged, and here's why, well, that municipality might fight back at you and say, well, no, it's not. Well, now you can say, no, walk around yourself. And you could do a live shot, just like the Jerusalem's Holy Fire Ceremony, the BBC, or you could produce a piece like this that is narrated as well, to say, hey, this is just how big of a problem it is. The landfill has been overfilled and they haven't come up with a plan for this. It's being dumped in places it shouldn't be dumped. In the United States, that's often in the ocean. It's put out on barges. New York City.
We live in California, and there are days that it gets so bad that you can't go swim at the beach.
Yeah, you can't swim at the beach, because if it rains too much, it'll actually, waste will dump into the ocean. New York City still sends barges out into the Atlantic Ocean to dump trash deep into the ocean. That might sound surprising, considering New York City is trying to be very environmentally friendly, and so is California. But these issues still happen in the United States, not as much as they used to, but they're still there. And we want our readers to know why this is such a big deal. So these are great use case scenarios for when to do this. Same thing when it comes to conflict reporting. This was one that was done by Riot News, which then got bought by a few other companies. But their studio was really the first one to get into Aleppo right after it was bombed in 2015. And we're actually take you somewhere.
Yeah, and we're actually starting to see this now in Ukraine, which we're all sort of watching unfold, right, in real time, and getting misinformation and disinformation. Oh no, this isn't what's happening. This is what's happening. When we have these images where we can look all around in terms of destruction and the effect, particularly on civilian populations, it's impactful. And there's been several studies that have been done. The people that experience images in virtual reality have a more empathetic reaction, are sort of, impacted more by it than they would be just seeing what we call sort of flat video or flat photos.
It's definitely obviously misinformation, disinformation, bringing someone to a particular environment, but our audiences immediately try to react and connect to the visuals we show them. It's something we see in climate change when we show polar bears that are dying in the Arctic. That's very hard for somebody who lives in Nebraska, in the central part of the United States,
or where most of you are,
or India. Yeah. Your audiences aren't going to really relate to a polar bear unless they saw it at a zoo, maybe. Mm-hmm. But even then, it's not something that's familiar. But if you bring somebody to a low-lying coastal area that is experiencing historic flooding because of sea level rise and climate change, and show what their day in and day out looks like, they're going to sit in a school on the coast and see flooding and realize, oh, I went to a school like that. Or they're going to try to find places that they can relate to a specific piece of content. So whether that's a market or a school. And that's what we're really focusing on in immersive environments, is relatable content that we can create and have people explore it for themselves.
And then this, I thought was just really interesting because of what's happening in our world right now. So this is 2017. The New York Times embedded itself with the Ukrainian military and how they're going about training.
And it's a military summer camp, essentially, and it's a readiness for kids in Ukraine. And the whole purpose of this back then was talking about the threat of Russia in Ukraine. And of course, fast forward 5 years, and it pretty much came exactly the way that the folks in this piece would have described, was essentially military readiness. And again, you can see they're adding text up here. There's no voiceover for this one. And so we'll talk about different styles of 360.
One thing I want to do, in the last one, you may have noticed it wasn't video, it was just still pictures that they just sort of sat.
There's video as well. There's video and still pictures as well.
Because you don't always have to have video, you can just do so. So we'll keep going.
We'll keep going through.
Kind of show you how to go about this.
So we're going to, in terms of creating 360 content, we're going to talk about the planning, editing, and publishing side of 360. The camera that is to the right here is the one that we recommend the most across the board to news organizations across the globe. It is not cheap, but it is not crazy expensive like you would see a professional DSLR camera or mirrorless camera from Nikon or Canon or Sony. It's about a third of the price of some of those professional DSLR cameras, which we like from an accessibility standpoint. So it shoots in 360 video, which is obviously what we like. It's fairly rugged, which is great. You can get lens protectors and that sort of thing if it drops, but also most importantly, it's waterproof, which we really like. So you can put it with that underwater drone. You can dunk it underwater as well, and it will stitch video underwater, and it creates and stitches that video. There's no more 6 GoPros like you see behind me trying to get this content to work. So it's very, very accessible, very easy to use, and really, I would say in terms of skill level, it's the same skill level as filming with a GoPro camera, and it's actually about the same price as well.
As your phone
or a
camera.
smartphone.
Yeah.
Oh, great! You have used an Insta360. Wonderful. We really
you
love
liked it.
Hopefully you
We're
liked
selling it.
Yeah. We're really big fans of it, and we've used all of their cameras from their big pro cameras. And actually, believe it or not, we were just finishing a large project with some of their pro cameras that cost about $4,000 or $5,000 US, and switched to this camera for the reason of much simpler to use, waterproof, and very, very rugged. So we're big fans.
And also, we checked on Amazon India, and it's available in 1 to 2 days, as
most of the world is now on Amazon. You want to think about the experience your audience is going to have, which Brooke just outlined on all 3 of our examples. We mentioned for VR is bringing you a place, for AR is bringing it to you. A couple of those different styles, local TV news report where you're actually on camera.
Yeah.
You can almost use it. There's a package that comes with a selfie stick. And believe it or not, one of the most successful use cases for this is essentially in the news world, the live shot, where you put it on the selfie stick, it connects to your smartphone, and you can live stream to Facebook or YouTube directly from your smartphone app that's controlling the camera. That's remarkable for what used to be very difficult just to run a live shot. Now, if you're in 4G or 5G cell service, you can run a live shot from a VR camera that you can walk people through. That would be something you would obviously want to market or advertise ahead of time so your readers know when you're going to do this live shot. But what's also great about that is you can do your live shot walking through, and then it's recorded, and you can post that later as well. But definitely think of it as someone's physical head, which sounds a little odd, but you would want to place the camera where somebody would physically be walking through. Now, in the case of the Jerusalem BBC piece, it was so crowded they had to hold it up above people just a little bit. But if you were, doing a walk on a beach cleanup for an environmental story, you would essentially want it about 5 to 6 feet off the ground. That would be the same head height. Was that?
Yeah. No, I was just saying, you want to kind of think where my head would be. So a lot of people tend to, when they film, get below something as if you're like a small child looking up, which you don't want to do. And you also don't want to be up too high as if you're looking down on things, because that's, if people are moving around, it's a funny angle. And one more thing to consider is that the movement of the camera. So because people are going to be looking around, you don't want to move the camera too fast. So say you're walking around a space, you want to make sure that you're kind of moving a little bit slower than you would if you were walking, because you want people to have time to look around and not get sick when they're, and also don't try and attach it to like something that's flying really fast, or don't, if you're in a car or something, try not to go again too fast because people can get a little bit sick. We've experimented with putting this on airplanes and boats and things. One of the other advantages of the Insta360, which we particularly like, and all of the 3 cameras I've listed here have it, it essentially auto levels your horizon, which is really helpful. So it's got gyroscopes built in. So it actually doesn't matter if you're holding your camera upright or at an angle. It'll basically
level out your horizon, which is super, super helpful. So if your tripod's not perfectly straight, or if you end up mounting it, let's say, to a tractor on a farm to talk about agriculture, if it happens to be mounted sideways or clamped or anything like that, it doesn't really, it's not that big of a deal. There are 3 to consider: Ricoh Theta, Insta360 One X2, which is the one we mentioned, and the GoPro Fusion. All 3 of these have auto leveling, can do live stream. We recommend the Insta360 because it's waterproof. The Ricoh Theta is not, the GoPro is, and it's a little bit more durable. Also, what we've found is Insta360 is the largest out of the 3 companies doing VR. Believe it or not, they're actually doing more work than GoPro in this space. And so when it comes to, if it happens to break, or replacements, or availability, or even technical support, we're just a big fan. The other thing that you can do with this is actually creating 360 still images, which does not need any additional equipment, which we are also, from an accessibility standpoint, a big fan of. So actually the Google Street View app for Android and iOS has essentially a feature built into it where you can add 360 images to a map, which is great, but you can also download those 360